Hi everyone, I'm Dan, and welcome to the 80's Emporium, your home and
eternal resting place
for everything 80's. Monster movies have been around since 1925's The Lost World, and giant creatures such as King Kong and Godzilla have terrorized towns in every decade since. But in the 80's, the script was turned upside down, or should I say, shrunken. The decade was notable for a unique twist on the monster movie subgenre that took off in 1984 and died out only 10 years later. The tiny monster.
You know, Amanda, there are no real monsters.
Gremlins is undoubtedly the most famous, but it was certainly not the first. There are a number of films that could have partially been responsible for giving rise to the tiny monster genre. There's 1974's It's Alive, which features a murderous mutant baby. Creating the creature was one of the first gigs for now legendary special effect makeup artist Rick Baker, who has enjoyed a very successful career, winning Oscars for his work on films such as An American Werewolf in London, The Nutty Professor, and Men in Black. There's also Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, whose title pretty much says it all. The wacky horror comedy, which was largely inspired by Hitchcock's The Birds, was a hit in theaters and, despite poor reviews, embraced as a cult classic. Its 1988 sequel, Return of the Killer Tomatoes, is known for featuring a young George Clooney in just his third ever role. In the little-known Canadian horror film, The Pit, the tiny monsters, called Tralalogs, don't come to us. Instead, child actor Sammy Snyders brings victims to them.
We all have to go sometime.
1982's Basket Case was the rare low-budget horror comedy that was actually well-reviewed.
What's in the basket?
The crew reportedly had to cut corners by dumpster diving for set dressing and sometimes filming without a permit. But there was one movie that is largely credited with starting the tiny monster boom. The Joe Dante directed 1984 horror comedy classic, Gremlins. The PG-rated film featured some pretty violent and scary scenes, and after complaints, the MPAA introduced the PG-13 rating. Check out our episode on the dawn of PG-13 for more information as to how that all went down. Gremlins was a big financial success, and not just from ticket sales. Gremlins launched a popular merchandising campaign, with gizmos and gremlins being sold as dolls, action figures, trading cards, and even a cereal.
Gremlins, gremlins, bite after bite. What a tasty way to satisfy a gremlin appetite.
Gremlin cereal is part of this complete breakfast.
Gremlin, yum yum.
While it might appear to be a direct ripoff of Gremlins, Ghoulies was actually shot while Gremlins was being filmed, and the filmmakers claimed the timing was simply a coincidence. Ghoulies mostly centers on a man who becomes obsessed with a book of magic spells. In fact, the titular creatures merely serve as supporting antagonists. Ghoulies received mostly negative reviews, but it was the film debut of award-winning actress Mariska Hargitay, who is best known for her role as Olivia Benson in Law & Order SVU, which she has played for over 20 years. If you want to give your friends an affordable and unique Halloween treat, or trick, check out Stu Pollard on Cameo. All the money goes to the charitable efforts of Truancy. Our next film, Attack of the Beast Creatures, was an independent production that was actually completed before Gremlins and Ghoulies, but not released until the summer of 1985. This indie film was poorly promoted and featured mostly inexperienced actors. In fact, not a single cast member ever appeared in another film project.
Oh no, my leg! Oh!
Even Stephen King got in on the fun with Cat's Eye, a film adaptation of his horror anthology Night Shift. Facing off against a tabby cat, which was actually played by 12 different cats, and a young Drew Barrymore is an evil troll who lives in a hole in the wall. This creature works alone, but is extremely dangerous and attempts to steal the breath of children. Cat's Eye notably features a number of references to other Stephen King projects, such as Cujo, Christine, Pet Sematary, and The Dead Zone.
No idea what's going on in this damn movie anyway. I don't know who writes this crap.
Thanks to Reunicy for sponsoring this video. Planning reunions can be a big pain. Everyone uses Facebook, but Facebook is full of clutter, advertisements, and people being nasty in the comments, and frankly, I always forget to check it. That's why the folks at Reunicy came up with their platform, which is clean, simple, easy to use, and entirely free. Just go to reunicy.com to start your group, and check out the link below for a sample page I made with a bunch of characters featured in this episode. New Line Cinema entered the tiny monster genre with Critters, which followed a group of fuzzy aliens called Krites, who were hungry for everything and everyone. It was no Gremlins, but superior to Ghoulies both critically and financially. A $10 million profit at the box office was enough to warrant a series of sequels.
If I had to give my blessing to any of the ripoffs, I would definitely choose the Critters series.
And if you ever get a chance to watch Critters 3, you might see a familiar face.
Whoa, whoa. Here I come. Oh, here I come. Oh.
If you haven't seen our episode on the top horror genres of the 80s, be sure to check that out on our channel as well. Munchies, not to be confused with the Frito-Lay snack, was created in part to capitalize on the tiny monster craze. In fact, to direct the film, producer Roger Corman hired Tina Hirsch, who was actually the editor of Gremlins. Not only is the plot uncomfortably similar to Dante's project, but the monsters look and sound remarkably like the Mogwai. The film starred Harvey Korman, who played two different roles. Still, it was almost universally panned. Unlike Gremlins, Ghoulies, and Critters, this film never received any sequels. If you're enjoying this video, please give us a like and subscribe to this channel. In The Gate, two boys accidentally unleash miniature creatures from a portal in their backyard. Well, this film was unique in that the small creatures were not created with puppetry and animatronics, but rather by actual actors in costumes who were filmed using forced perspective. Fun fact, The Gate was the first film appearance of actor Stephen Dorff, who is most well known for his roles in the TV shows Deputy and True Detective. You thought these movies were wacky? We are just getting started. Our next film is a mostly forgotten horror parody called Sorority Babes in the Slimeball Bowl-O-Rama. That's right. This time, our tiny troublemaker takes the form of a wish-granting imp named Uncle Impy, who traps a group of teenagers inside a mall. The story is based on a famous cautionary tale from 1902 called The Monkey's Paw, which has been adapted by the likes of Orson Welles and Alfred Hitchcock. Heralded as one of the worst films ever made, Hobgoblins was likely the first nail in the coffin that would soon be home to the tiny monster subgenre. The monsters in this horror comedy cause their victims to hallucinate their greatest fantasies before they are killed. It's an interesting twist, but poor production design, unrealistic puppets, bizarre plot points, and weird gaps in logic doomed Hobgoblins to the number 26 spot on IMDb's worst rated films of all time. But its infamy as a bad movie actually earned it a following, and it gained a bit of a second life in 1998 with Mystery Science Theater 3000. The tiny monster phenomenon continued into the early 90s with final sequels to Gremlins, Critters, Killer Tomatoes, and The Gate, all making their bows by 1992, most of which went directly to VHS. As the 10-year anniversary of Gremlins approached, without a single comparable film having reached its level of success, filmmakers and audiences alike seemed to realize that maybe the tiny monster horror movie had overstayed its welcome. Or perhaps it was never truly welcome to begin with. As for whether the genre will return, that's anyone's guess. A new Killer Tomatoes movie was reported to have started filming in 2019, but it's been quiet ever since, likely due to the COVID-19 pandemic. HBO Max is rebooting Gremlins as an animated limited prequel series to the 1984 film, and it's largely believed that if the series succeeds, a movie may not be far behind. So, have you seen any of these tiny monster films? What's your favorite? Let us know if you watch any of these this Halloween season. Remember to follow us on social media. We post fun throwbacks, 80s trivia, and more. Enjoy your spooky season. And remember, just because we're bigger than tiny monsters doesn't mean they aren't dangerous.